Good evening, everyone. Lovely to be here. Lovely to see you guys. Firstly, to extend my thanks to the organisers and to our hosts, of course. It's really a pleasure to be with you guys, and some pretty solid questions so in that previous one, so I'm hoping you're a bit easier on me. Just a bit of a quick intro. So yeah, I'm Sadiq Damani. Yes, my name is the same as the Mayor of London. Yes, I pronounced it differently. And yes, it was a bit weird when I was going home from work one day and saw the Evening Standard opposite me saying, Sadiq did a terrible job, and I was like, shit. Thankfully, well, no, actually, it's not getting any better, but Theresa May's taking the headlines instead. I'm from Theodo. I'm the CEO at Theodo UK, and my creativity got me to this incredible title, which no doubt attracted everyone to come. Yeah. Hopefully, we'll get into it as to actually what I really mean by this, but yeah, unfortunately, my creativity does limit me a tad. So, we'll jump in. Number one, I need to tell you all that I'm atrocious at slides. Secondly, we'll go into a bit about what I mean by scale, because I think it's quite a subjective, not quite subjective, but has many different meanings on different circumstances, if you like. Thirdly, what I actually mean by leveraging agility. Again, agility is a huge word. And yeah, go on to the framework. And then finally, about what this framework could actually deliver for you guys, what to expect from it. With regards to this framework, I refer to it now with complete vagueness, but just as a bit of an intro, this framework that I'm going to go through, maybe you guys are familiar with, but it's one that has really underpinned Theodo's growth over the past 10 years. We're now, and if we jump to the next slide and I'll start going into what scale means, we're now 7 businesses in IT services between a few countries, quite a few employees, 10 years of going and 40% year-on-year growth. And I'm not saying this as a way to brag or anything like that, because there were many before me who set the foundations. Rather that what is helping us get there is this framework that I want to go into. And I really firmly believe that hopefully by the end of today, you can actually go into your teams tomorrow, regardless of their business function, if it's tech, if it's product, if it's sales, if it's whatever, and actually start implementing this framework. So drum roll throughout, and hopefully we'll get there. Hopefully we get there. Let's jump into it a bit further. So what do I mean by leveraged agility? 2 weird definitions about agility: move quickly and easily, and secondly, to think and understand quickly. And I've kind of gone for that second one of understand quickly. We're all in environments whereby the market's changing faster than we think. Macroeconomics is changing faster than we realize it as well. And day to day, personnel are changing. The job market's moving very quick. The next thing you know, someone's leaving the company, 10 people are joining, a new project's boarded. How do you understand quickly what actually needs to be done? We as a company use agility in terms of how we deliver our products, but I'm not going to go into that side of things, the Scrum kind of world. I'm going down a more lean route, and we've kind of enabled lean to meet Scrum, and it's got a bit theoretical, so I could go into that for a few more days. Lastly, a really crappy quote, so we can miss that one out and just, go to the next slide. During our growth, or when we started, we kicked off this thing called project forms. So every single week with our clients, for example, at the moment we'll have, 10 project weeks at any given week for 10 different clients that we're serving. We're asking them every week about our speed and our collaboration, and if they had any general feeling about how we're doing or how we could improve. So this was quite a big moment in the company. We're only about 2-3 years in Paris at this point, and we got these forms and started giving them out. And for those of you who've worked with French individuals, I don't know if any of you guys are French. If you are, be ready. If you've worked with Parisians more specifically, they're a tad challenging sometimes, a bit direct, but that's fine because you get direct feedback. So we're like, okay, cool. We set a standard and we said, when we ask you about our speed, we're expecting to get 4 out of 5, and that's our minimum standard. That's very good in Theodo terminology. 5 gives you an excellent. So if we get a sum of less than 8 on speed and collaboration, all hell needs to break loose in the company. Our senior management or our tactical team gets in, and everything kicks off. So we started reacting to them. And when we started reacting, that's when we started to see a big spike in our growth. Of course, many other things were going on at the same time, but a lot of it actually boiled down to this. And from it, we started to see some common trends. Oh, I don't have enough visibility. Oh, we didn't refine this feature well enough. Oh, I haven't got what I needed, blah, 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 blah. Sometimes it was just the office needed a better air conditioner because we were in the startup mode at the time. So what the framework that we're going to go on to, I'm going to hopefully explain, is goals like this, where you say, okay, 90% of our project forms, i.e. 500 project weeks in a year, for example, are very good or above. It's quite an ambitious target in a Parisian world especially, and also in London actually, to be fair. So once you set an ambitious target like this, what framework can actually help you get there? And how do you start to solve trends like 10 people spoke about lack of visibility, 10 people spoke about X, Y, and Z. If we jump on to the next one, we'll start going into some of the examples, and hopefully this will be applicable to you to say, maybe we could launch one of these ourselves. So some of the things that we've done at Theodo in terms of our goals. So 100% of proposals that we send are signed, which from a sales team perspective, quite ambitious. And at the moment we've reached 90%. So if you don't want to buy from us, probably don't come and see us, because yeah, anyway. 100% of candidates who reach stage 3 or 4 of an interview process actually join the company. £0 overdue invoices when we've got 21-day payment terms. 100% of Theodoers in the company actually get promoted within the year. So they're all pretty ambitious targets. They're very businessy. And if we go to the next one, there's a few kind of techie ones. So how to write what we define as a good test, inverted commas, within 15 minutes rather than just spending days, well, maybe days, on it. How do you increase a team's speed velocity by 50% across an 8-week project without not delivering anything for the first 3 weeks? And then you can kind of have a good mathematical argument to say that you've really made it. And lastly, one that we really put a lot of focus on, our go-to stack is Django and React. So why not have something whereby we can have this in production and coding on it within 90 minutes rather than having this typical 3-day setup to get everything going. So quite ambitious kind of headlines. Hopefully you can resonate with at least 1, 2, or 3 of them. And hopefully now you'll be like, okay, let's give this a crack tomorrow when I get back into the office. Let's get going. How? How many of you guys have heard of Kaizen? Cool. Talking like, okay, 30%, amazing. Yeah, again, the asterisks of among many other things. So the Kaizen framework, some prerequisites as to how you can get this. So just a reminder, Kaizen, we've literally placed all of our money in that basket and we're saying this is how we're going to scale our company. So far, so good. We'll see you in a year, hopefully, or maybe beyond. Some prerequisites. Number 1, hire people who actually want to innovate and, quite importantly, actually care about what they're doing in their day-to-day work. Kaizen was born out of like this lean Japanese Toyota type mindset. And one thing that's incredibly insightful about the way that they work is that regardless of you being the CEO or the president, right the way through to the intern's friend who managed to wing his way into a job and put a door on a car, they actually care about putting that door on that car. They live it, they breathe it, they love it. That's a huge prerequisite. Secondly, ensure there is actually a sponsor from someone a little bit more further up. OKRs, I assume that's kind of a common thing amongst many companies now, or these kind of high-level company KPIs. Try and link this goal of yours to a company objective. And again, it kind of links back to people who actually care about the business, who care about wanting to do better, who care about wanting to get a door on a car because you kind of need it to sell it. And finally, toughest one for people like me, give the team space. Like, just give them a bit of time. You know, maybe the blockers board is a good way to do that. So those are some of the prerequisites. We move on. 6 steps. 6 steps, bear with me. Number 1, identify your performance. I was going to give you a running example as we go, but I think it may get a little bit, well, yeah, maybe we won't. Maybe we can do one a bit after. What are you actually measuring? What are you trying to improve? So here we go. Let me give you an example. Let's actually go with it. If, for example, you're saying, I want to be able to increase the team's velocity by 50% across 8 weeks in the sprint, great. Let's make a nice visual graphic to represent it. Without the visualization of it, honestly, it just falls to the ground. So if you come to our office, the whole length of it is just whiteboards with graphs all over the place. I call it graffiti, sometimes call it work. It depends on the day. But it's really, really important to have that. And that last point about telling the story, for example, in day 3, or for example, in week 3, this is when we implemented X. And boom, we got a spike. Happy days. Because that story actually resonates with your team. They actually are like, this isn't just a nonce framework that is nonsense. It's actually got something. It's got some legs. And I'm proud of this new backlog refinement style that we've implemented, or I'm proud of this new prerequisite checklist on before we speak to a client, etc. And it gives that story so that when people are walking past, maybe I can use that on my team. And we'll come on to that a little bit later. So step 1, identify your performance and visualize it. Step 2, I must admire your clicking at the moment. It's incredible. Either it's good cues or just great clicking. Analyze your current methods. So what does that really mean? You've got stuff already happening in your business, right? You must already be doing something in your process that's, giving your client some sort of visibility. What is it? What is that process? Do you actually understand what it is? And more importantly, the team that's doing it best, do you know why they're doing it best? And is there a very easy learning just to take from them that you can implement into your team immediately? What are the existing things that are going on? That second point is also quite interesting, and I think we come onto it in the next slide, but I'll hold on that I'll mention that for the time being. One of the most critical parts of this is to take what we call pieces. So if I use the recruitment example, if a candidate hasn't gone through from receiving the CV through to joining the company, that is a piece you need to analyze. That is what in the Japanese Toyota terms they'll call is a red bucket. It's your door didn't fit on the car, you need to put that in this red bucket if it fits, write out a little form to say what actually went wrong with it, analyze it. Because if you don't analyze the piece, what typically happens is that you get someone overly energetic like myself turn up and say, I've got the answers, no issues, no need to look at the pieces, I've got a hunch and I'm going with it. It's nice to give some creativity, but having some factual evidence as to where you're thinking, where your hypothesis has come from is critical in making sure you don't come up with random suggestions that solve 5% of your problems, when actually there's maybe 80% who are all complaining about the same cause. So it forces you to actually face the facts. So we've now analyzed our current methods. Amazing. Step number 3. Almost perfectly on cue. Almost. Just a couple of seconds, that one. It was good. Generating new ideas. So now you're analyzing. There we go. Yeah, so I do mention it there. Now you're analyzing. You now have an excuse to say, okay, 8 of these tickets that didn't have a picture on them when we were going through backlog refinement actually failed. Maybe we can add a picture. I wouldn't say it's the most inspiring thing you've got to come up with, but it's on the way. You're doing something. You're trying something. And once you start to do that, you can then actually start to build these new ideas and begin to share only if they're actually working, because there's no point in sharing something that doesn't work, which is why step 4 becomes very important. And I actually think, arguably, this is the biggest dropout. Because once you've got someone like me, like I said, the energetic guy in the room, who's gone in his hunch and, maybe I've come up with different ideas, whatever, it's very easy for me to slam them down and then forget about them next week. Unfortunately, and back to one of the first points I mentioned, giving the team time and space is actually very important. Their experiment isn't going to work at a click of a finger. You're not going to have the apple from the tree every day. Maybe once a week, maybe once a month. Of course, you can't always wait that long, so maybe you have to find some more trees with more apples. But this is where you need to be so rigorous and not to BS yourself or your team. So when you come up with a new idea, actually give yourself a check, a very concrete binary check. Did we have any back from validations on tickets that didn't have pictures that we took into the sprint? Maybe you can give yourself some leeway and say maybe it's just a decrease of them. And if so, at least you're starting to actually recognize, yes, I can validate that that worked and this didn't work. So now maybe I'm in a position to, next slide, implement this not only in my team, but further afield as well. Guys, stick pictures on your ticket. Stick pictures, the expected result. oh, but the designs aren't ready. Pick up a bloody pen and draw it on the board what it could look like. Maybe get some colors, do something. Oh, but I've run out of colors. Use paint for crying out loud. Oh, paint shit, you know, you can keep going. Anyhow, do something, execute and experiment. And like I said, that's usually where I'm gonna jump to. And I'm the toughest guy to control in that room. And finally, start to standardize it. One thing I've learned with the company is that trying to get these innovative ideas as commonplace and common practice across the company is so difficult. And it's so infuriating when you hear just one team there working on said project and one team here talking about the same problem 3 weeks apart from one another, and they haven't picked up the learning. So you need to have a common place whereby you can store those learnings. It can be whatever. It can be, in fact, our MVP approach, when we had kind of like, research time boxes, whatever, to see if this library did what it did, on the fridge, you would stick a post-it saying, if you have this problem, try this library, and then the name of the guy who did it. It's the most MVP thing. Thankfully, it evolved a little bit. Now we have a blog that everyone actually buys into and really contributes to every single day, or a bit of a stretch, you're gonna check me. Once a week, once every 10 days, there's a new thing going out there and people go to it. And then we had to optimize its search because finding stuff started to get difficult. But there was a common place where you could have all of these learnings, and that helps you as a company get stronger because you're constantly innovating. So just to review all of those 6 steps, and I have a lovely picture of this on the next slide, is this, which is a slightly pixelated, so I apologize. Number 1, performance. Number 2, get the current methods and analyze what the hell is going wrong. Number 3, start your creative ideas. 4, check it's actually working. Don't BS yourself. 5, actually get into doing it. And 6, share only the good stuff that's going on. And what's really interesting about this is that once you have your first Kaizen title, we like to do it on team speed, because once you start on team speed, you have a testing ground, almost. And it gives birth to, for example, recently, one of the guys was like, actually, TypeScript could really solve this. Next thing you know, within 6 weeks, TypeScript was common practice across both the UK office and started to go further afield in France. If Brexit thinks it can stop that, anyhow, Brexit's sensitive still. So, anyhow, the expected and less expected outcomes of this. So this was a hunch, we went with it, we gave it a crack, we believe in Toyota, we swear by them, and they said give it a go, so we gave it a go. Here's kind of what we've learned from it. Number 1, if you do have smart people in your team, and I pray you have smart people in your team, they do start innovating. They enjoy that space, they enjoy that passion. Everyone gets to benefit, and this third one's quite cool actually, because I don't know if you guys have this, where some people get itchy feet where they say, I've been on the same project for so long, I just want to swap over, When you're innovating on your project or on whatever you're doing day to day, it doesn't feel like the same thing every day. You're ongoing, you're creating V2, V3, V4, you're trying things, and it gets you across the company. And this last one, we've seen this, and I can testify for it, that's your company objectives. If you've aligned the Kaizen well enough with your company objectives, start to go green, and that's pretty satisfying. And similarly, even on our company objectives, we have the story on there in saying, actually this Kaizen gave birth to this idea, which we saw an initial spike or a reduction in the project forms of people complaining about visibility, for example. So those are kind of like the expected ones. The less expected ones, leaders start being born from random places. And there's an amazing story from one of my colleagues in France who's one of the most introverted engineers who I've ever met, and I'm really, really grateful for the role I'm in, because I get to meet so many different engineers, from the loudest to the not so loud. And all of a sudden, this guy's gone from the introvert to saying, hey, this project has to start with my technical detail of 15 days of running these tests and blah, 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 blah. And he's facing up to the sales team. We're like, no, just start the blipping project. He's like, no. Look at my piece. It's just a random level of inspiration and confidence that starts to come out of people when perhaps they never thought they had it in them, and maybe you never hired them for that in the first place. The job satisfaction part is really cool as well. It's a nice kind of outcome of it. And this last point, it never, ever stops. Innovation doesn't stop. Innovation continues. It helps you to grow, and when you grow, opportunity and You guys know the story. Moving on to one last piece. Actually, no, I think there's two more. So to conclude, yeah, I guess Kaizen's helped us scale to grow our group quite significantly, and we are hedging our bets on it to help us grow even further and maintain our growth as a group, not just as an individual company. The framework is very simple, so I come back to the point I made very early on. You can apply it to your development, you can apply it to speed, you can apply it to sales, to progression, to whatever. And look, if you want to bounce an idea off me as to what is a good and what is a bad idea, by all means grab me. I'm really, really happy to help because trust me, I've given birth to some really bad ones. So, I've got kind of the notion behind it. And, we all love triples, especially when they have alliteration. Patience, perseverance, and passion. Without those three attributes, I really think trying to innovate becomes a pretty tough job. Or, you need to have those competencies. And maybe in your hiring process, you should be searching for those three. I think the next slide has some wise words from a dear master, where he said, "A journey, a Kaizen is, a destination, it is not." He didn't say it. What is he trying to say? Don't try and see Kaizen as the end result. It's going to be the enabler for your journey to reach something. It's not going to work tomorrow. It's not going to work in a week. It's going to take weeks. It's going to take weeks. Now, if you don't think that you can give your company space or your team space to innovate within weeks, you're goddamn impatient. And that's really the summary of it.